we all have the gift of this like psychic ability or even mediumship. We're all born with it. It's just a matter of like what degree and like whether we choose to build on it and to strengthen that muscle.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another explorative episode of Cosmic Convergence. My name is John, and today my co hosts, Daniel and Christian, are joined by medium and guide to the divine feminine, Mandy Wilde. Some, if not all, of our viewership might wonder, why aren't we covering our usual topics of non human intelligences and disclosure for this episode? What does mediumship have to do with the phenomena? Well, more research has been accumulating over the years that is showing similarities between the paranormal, such as ghosts and spirits via clairvoyance and clairsentience of contactees, among several other experiences that reach across what some call the veil between worlds and dimensions, often talked of in the field of ufology. Miss Wilde has been gracious enough to join us to speak of her personal background and skills as a medium. We hope that this will be an insightful episode for all to enjoy and gain a better perspective on the phenomena and how it interacts with us on a personal and global level. Welcome, Mandy Wilde, Wild Medium,
Thank
for
you.
joining us on Cosmic Convergence. We are excited to have you here, and I know we've talked for a long time about getting you to be a guest on the show, and I do appreciate that we're finally connecting. As everybody that's involved in this field, whether it be mediumship or whether it be ufology, should come together and have discussions like we're going to have today. So again, welcome.
Thank you. I am so honored to be here and to have this conversation with you three. So I appreciate it.
Great.
Thanks for
It's
being
great.
here.
Thank you.
I know on your website, which we'll go ahead and feature, the Wild Medium, that you kind of noticed from childhood that you had this talent when it came to mediumship. Could you like maybe describe for us to us and the viewers maybe one of your first memories and of having this talent and what impact it had at you at such an early age?
Absolutely. It's such a great question. I feel like so many of us have these experiences, right? When I was a child, and I say that about like 6 years old, um, I saw my first spirit. Did not know that's what it was at the time. I was raised as a very uh, in a very strict United Pentecostal home. And I know we all kind of spoke a bit about our religious upbringing before this. It was a very religious home. Um, at this point in my life, my parents had moved out of a very small town into a sort of small town. And I don't know if you know too much about United Pentecostals, but at that point, like we didn't believe in having a Christmas tree, a television, anything of the sort. And so when my parents left this really small community into a sort of small community, we got a television and we got a Christmas tree. So the first Christmas tree I ever had was around, I think it was like I was 6 years old. And I remember my parents saying, look, we're going to put this up, but you can't sneak out of your room in the middle of the night and just come and hang out here. You got to stay in bed. You got to keep, got to stay asleep. I was like, okay, I promise. Well, in the middle of the night, I got up and disobeyed like most children do, at least me. And I went into the living room because I was in awe of like this like spectacle of a tree, and it was still lit up. And I was coming into the living room, and I remember in front of the tree I saw this figure. It was like this like male figure, and the first thing I thought, because I had heard about it in my school, was Santa Claus, right? Santa Claus comes with a tree. These people have Santa Claus come visit them when they put up a Christmas tree. I had never had that. So all of a sudden I'm like, there's this this being, this person is standing in front of my tree. That must be Santa. So I waved, and it literally just kind of turned toward me slowly and stared. And I wasn't scared. I wasn't weirded out. I was in awe. Like, wow, put up a tree and something magical happens. So I ran to my parents' bedroom and I was like, Dad, wake up. Santa Claus is in our living room. It worked. The tree worked. And he's like, what are you talking about? And my mom's like, why are you out of bed? I'm like, there's Santa Claus is in our living room. The man is in our living room. My dad grabs a baseball bat, runs into the living room, and he's like, "What? Who? Where? What? Wait, what are you talking about?" And I'm pointing to him, and so he's right there. Um, that was the first time that I realized, okay, I'm seeing something, and either they're not seeing it, or I don't know. I went back to bed, didn't think anything of it. And, for the remainder of the time we lived there, I remember just go, even without the Christmas tree at this point, going into the living room and this man being there. Um, Fast
Mm.
forward a couple of years, still grade school, I think years, I want to say maybe like fourth grade or something. My mother was in the kitchen making iced tea, and she had put it on the table, and we were sitting at the table together, and I looked up at the where the counters were, and I saw this woman start to go through the motions like my mom was. And I went, Mom, I was like, that woman is stirring like you are. And she was like, looking around, she's like, you've got to stop doing this. You've got to stop saying these things. And I think then it became like you can't talk about this in front of people. Like, make sure you keep this, under wraps. But you know, going back to being raised United Pentecostal, there was speaking in tongues, right? So there's this idea of like this like Holy Spirit like coming in and people channeling and speaking in tongues, speaking different languages. So it none of this felt like off to me. It seemed kind of on par, but I guess it was because it was outside of the church. So that was always something kind of rough when I was younger in experiencing this. But yeah, those are my earliest experiences.
That's fascinating. And I wasn't really thinking of this question, of course, before the interview, but now that you brought that up, I can remember at a very early age about how I felt about the phenomena and, ghosts and spirits, Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and all that stuff. But I never had imaginary friends. And my sister did, though. My little sister, my younger sister did. And, when you're just like, okay, yeah, kids playing and just using the imagination. But really, I mean, again, I didn't think about this question, but do you think there's anything to that? You think there's anything to the imaginary friend that, like, what if you had had interactions more with that being or that spirit that was in front of the Christmas tree and it gave you a name? Like, it sounds silly, but my little sister's imaginary friend was called Candy Mama, and we were
Love
really
that
poor,
name.
right? We were really poor, and she had this whole Candy Mama was African American, and she was older, and she was kind of a little heavy set and stuff, but she would always give my little sister candy. Now it may sound creepy to some, but we were really poor back then, and so we would practically fight each other over, we'd guard our plate of food that we had because we didn't know the next time we would eat. And she was talking about, and playing with Candy Mama and a few others. And so I just wonder if there's really something more to that than just imaginary friends. Which leads me to my next question that I really was not pondering before this. And have you had any of your clientele that you've done readings for or that you've interacted with? and done mediumship with and contacting with spirits. Has there ever been any crossover? Yes or no, possibly, with the whole like imaginary friend kind of thing, or like almost like a spirit guide that has been with them throughout their entire life, because that's really what it comes down to, is that these imaginary friends are almost like spirit guides. Has there any
Absolutely.
been any? Yeah,
That's a really great question. Yes, there has. And to answer your other question about the imaginary friends, um, absolutely. Like we all, as children, have this such an expansive imagination, right? And we are so in tune with the granule nature of being before it gets, kind of wiped from our when we're in school and we've got these rigid timelines that we adhere by. But yeah, absolutely. Um, the the imaginary friends, uh, I have seen a lot of those end up being spirit guides, because what I've been shown is that we are all given, a number of guides and they grow and they shrink throughout our lifetime. And we have like a core or even a few core guides that are with us for an entire life. And throughout our life, we have ones that come in and come out, right? To guide us through um, different like challenges that we may be experiencing, or different like paths that we may be taking at that moment. Um, and so, yeah, absolutely. I have had clients where I'll see a guide come in, and I'll be describing them or telling them something. They're like, "That's so funny because when I was, 10, I played with someone called like Candy Mama or whatever, But yes, 1,000% yes. Um, and I was speaking earlier about uh, the fact that I truly believe we all have the gift of this like psychic ability or even mediumship. We're all born with it. It's just a matter of like what degree and like whether we choose to build on it and to strengthen that muscle. So yeah,
amazing.
great question, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you, Mandy. Appreciate that. Christian, Daniel.
Mhm.
Sure. I have a question. In regards to all of your experiences as a medium and talking to people and different spirits, can you describe the nature of consciousness as you understand it from your mediumship perspective, especially in relation to near-death experiences? Like why we come
It's
here?
Oh,
Oh,
why
sorry.
we come here? Yeah,
Like
yeah.
what they share with you, or
Absolutely. I mean, a large part of it is that they want to experience this kind of human state. I get that a lot. Um, Sometimes it is karmic. Sometimes it's kind of a gambit of things, but I would say the large portion of what I get is spirits saying they want to experience what we are experiencing.
So my first question I just wanted to ask, so kind of explaining your Pentecostal roots and having to go through that and being raised, since we're all, we're in religion at some point. Usually there's a phase of having to deconstruct that. Would you be able to go into a little bit more details of what that is, just for someone who's maybe listening, that maybe they're in that phase of trying to deconstruct the religion of black and white perspective, and then how you were able to kind of broaden it?
It's such a tender subject, right? Because those who are involved in, I know the religion that I was in, it took a lot to kind of break away from it, because when you are told if you do this and that, you're going to burn for eternity. That's so scary, right? And especially when you're being fed this as a very young child. I have so many traumatic experiences within the church that it is taking a very long time to break those old patterns of belief, and then now come at it in a different perspective, and to look at it in a much more beautiful way. Because most of my family is still within that religion, and they're great human beings, and they love me, for most of what I am, I think. But getting back to the question of like how to do it, it's so painful sometimes because, um, for example, like there were a number of times where I came home and no one was there, but was indication that they had been there and things maybe weren't closed up the way they should be. Like perhaps a light was left on, and my parents, John, you mentioned like how you grew up very poor. So did I. I grew up in a very like very
Financially challenged.
financially challenged. Thank you.
There
I
you go.
didn't try a way around it. Financially challenged household. So a light would not like be left on, and that was a really triggering thing for me to see. And um, I would think that the rapture had happened, and to be a young child thinking that your entire family got sucked up into the air and taken. And you were left is a really traumatic thing to feel. And it's not something that we're necessarily supposed to experience in our young brains, right? Our young minds. Um, but it took a long time all through my high school years. I was very adversarial. I would just like would challenge everything religious, and I would really not be comfortable talking about religion unless it was negatively. It wasn't until I started my own journey with the divine feminine and working with other goddesses and aspects of the divine that I was able to see it in a different light. And then fast forward to, many, many years later, many decades later, that I can now go and look at even Christianity in a much more gentle light, and look at it in the beauty that I feel like it could be seen as, but there's just so much around it that is very traumatic for a lot of people. Um, I mean, I remember being very young as well, and my aunt praying, at the, for us at the head of the bed, saying, bring guardian angels to protect, me and my sister at night. And I would start screaming and crying, like, don't do that, because I saw them. Like, they would come forward very quickly. That's one thing I know about angels is if you call them, they come, and they come very quickly. And I did not like that. And the energy is something I'm still not super comfortable with, is how swiftly they come in. That's just there are people who do like angel readings, and I think that's fantastic. For me, the energy is just a little too intense. But yeah, I remember those angels coming in very, very swiftly. I was never a fan of the way it felt. It was uncomfortable, and it was like electric. I didn't like it. So yeah.
That's really interesting.
Boy, religion made me the person I am today.
And in a way,
Doesn't that do it with all of us though?
yes, in a way, it's touched us all, and I'll let the viewership translate that how they will. No pun intended on touched, but it has had an effect on our lives. And again, being raised Catholic up to the age of 19, and a lot of my family on both sides are still Catholic, and no disrespect to them or anybody that is Catholic that might be watching this show. There is some beauty to it, as there are with all religions. It's just unfortunately the ones that are in control of it are usually the ones that warp it and use it for their own self gain, just like anything else in the human perspective of the universe. So I know that you offer let's see here, uh, guideship to women reclaiming their divine feminine energy, correct? And
Mhm.
that's very important, because looking at it from a church perspective and looking at it from, in my family, there being three aunts that were nuns. One is still alive. The other two have unfortunately passed. And I feel personally they've been reincarnated, and they're still going on their soul journeys and learning from each step. Have you had a lot of these reclaiming of divine feminine energy sessions? Okay. And has a result of it being because of religious upbringing and giving power, not in a bad way, but helping women reclaim their divine feminine, their power that they have as a woman, right? Rather than always still in Western culture, there's still that subservient to. I mean, subservient to men, lower pay rates, you name it, it's still there. You know, I mean, it's better than it used to be, of course. You know, we don't have women's suffrage as much as we used to, of course, but it's still there. And so I'm sure that through helping women reclaim their divine feminine energy, you've seen a lot of positive impact on these women. And the reason why I want to bring that up, just one little thing, is that we have interviewed skeptics that talk about mediums and mediumship. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to give them any sharing of the spotlight. But if those that are watching this episode are interested, I believe it's episode number 3, and I'll leave it at that. But she stated that a lot of mediumships and divinators, tarot readers, and such prey upon these women and, you know, suck their money dry, and they're all predators against these poor women, and, you know, drain their bank accounts. And I'm not saying there aren't some out there that are like that, but, you know, again, we have to make sure that we don't lump everybody into the same category. You talk about a little bit about helping women reclaim their divine feminine energy. Can you talk a little bit about that and the results that you've seen have happened to the wonderful women that you've helped?
I would love to. Actually, thank you so much for bringing this up because it's something that is very much more of a passion project for me. Mediumship, I do all the time. Working with the divine feminine is definitely a passion project. I don't know how deep I can go on this podcast.
As deep as you feel.
Okay, so to talk a little bit about the reclamation of like the divine feminine, I've reclaimed mine, right, by recarving my journey of healing into this like source of strength. So I grew up much like many, many, many women and men as well. So I don't want to just like put this one way, but I know there's a lot of women out there who've grown up like me with scars of sexual childhood trauma. I was sexually abused by someone in my family for a good part of like 18 years. And I was forced, much like they are forced, to confront the darker aspects of the feminine experience early on, way too early on. And instead of letting these experiences define or like diminish me, I chose to reclaim that power and try to reconnect. And what that ended up looking like for me for years and years and years of doing this was that reclamation of power and reconnecting with the divine feminine in all of her forms and recognizing that the divine feminine, whatever that is, whatever that means to you, whether it's like the Mother Mary, whether it's Ecate, whether it's Santa Muerte, whatever that means to you, like we're all paradoxal and there are so many different facets, much like ourself, right? It's this idea of understanding and loving all of those different facets that make up that one thing, like ourselves, to be beautiful and to be able to finally see ourselves as like this whole. So like through my spiritual practice, also I've learned to like embrace this goddess or this divine feminine like archetype, right? And more so of like that resilience, that liminality, the wildness, that transformation, the empowerment that kind of comes along with that. By working with these particular energies, I've not only been on like the path of healing, because it's still like a healing journey, even at 50. And I mean, I've been through therapy ever since I was a teenager while going through this. But I've also been able to find my voice and offer it as a guide for others on their own journeys. So I always hope that when I talk about this, it's reaching other people that are on their healing journeys in their own way. And I just want to say, like right here, right now, like I, I see you. You are not alone. I hear you. I support you. Um, now, this reclamation is it's interesting because when we go on like a divine feminine journey, it's kind of that dissension into like the cave, right? Or like our underworld, our personal underworld. And it's something that we just kind of like explore and learn to love and maybe be able to like flesh out together. And hopefully, and usually this has been the case, at least this is what I've gotten feedback from my clients. And if you're my client and you feel otherwise, please let me know. But I've had really lovely, lovely feedback. And so much that I've started something called Indomani Akate, where I host a bi-monthly new moon gathering for anyone who's like Akate focused or Akate devoted, or even just Akate curious, because part of like working with Akate is going into our own like caves, right? I always just it's sad that the divine feminine, when we get to these darker aspects, they get categorized as something negative. But the truth is, these emotions, um, these are qualities, right? They're not something negative. They're a vital part of the full spectrum of the energy of the divine, however you look at it, whatever that means to you. Um, but yeah, it's fierce, it's protective, it's power that is greatly misunderstood and undervalued because it doesn't fit in a neat little box, right? That society or religion likes to place women in, especially. But yeah, because there's like this implication that it makes it like less desirable or less managed.
That's just the
But yeah.
patriarchal. That's just the patriarchal viewpoint. And
Hmm.
I want to speak to all you patriarchal people that might be out there watching this right now. Is you can try to ignore it as much as you want, but within you there's a feminine energy. We are all dualistic, and that's also what Mandy's talking about: is the dualism of the soul, if you will. The whole universe is dualistic. Everything that comes from it is dualistic. But yet not everything is just black and white. We have a lot of aspects within ourselves. We have masculine aspects and we have feminine aspects. And I know that when I first started really going into my spiritual journey, post Catholicism, the first thing that I did was just from some random woman I met at a Renaissance fair that just came up to me and said, "You look like you've lost something. You're searching for something." And I was like, "I don't know you." And she let me read The Spiral Dance by Starhawk, which is an amazing book. It's Wiccan, but an amazing book. And she's very much in tune, of course, with the divine feminine. And so shout out to Starhawk, even though you probably won't see this. It's still a very, very influential book for me, even to this day, even though I don't consider myself a Wiccan anymore and haven't for a long time. Beautiful book. And we all have it within us. So for you patriarchal men out there that are wondering why you can never hold on to a steady relationship with a woman, or you're afraid of a strong woman and being in a relationship with them, and all you want is a trad wife, and that it's everybody else's fault and not yours. You need to do your own soul searching internally and discover your own divine feminine, and then understand that women do have a place in our society that is respectful, and that they are equals, if nothing else. And we all have that inner Kali, right? We all have that inner Kali.
Yes.
We all have that inner Akate, and we all have that inner loving goddess and loving God. And we all need to get really, I think, back in touch with our nature. I think what we're doing on a daily basis, and the way we treat people, others, the planet, animals, and such, and I'll get off my soapbox here in a moment, is we're going against our nature. Some would say, no, that it is our nature. That's the reptilian. That's the reptile. That's the reptile nature. But even reptiles don't treat the environment poorly. So that's a biblical way. So I'm going to erase that. But we really just do need to get more in touch with ourselves and with everything around us. And then we will have experiences of mediumship. We will be able to unlock our inner talents more, whether that be painting a painting, whether that be writing a book, whether that be talking to ancestors, whether that be, but the more we just destroy and the more that we just put other people down, like women or other people just in general, then we're not doing ourselves any favors. Actually, we're just making life worse for ourselves and others around us. So I will get off my soapbox now, and I'm going to give it to one of my other hosts. Thank you for that answer. Thank you, Mandy.
Oh, you're welcome. I like your soapbox. I enjoyed that. Thank you.
Yeah, the soap is made from no animal byproducts.
There you go. Love it.
So, Mandy, I completely agree with you, and I'm glad you're out there doing that. I know a couple of women in my life that have gone through similar, and this is going to tie into a question, but I've also read some books. Dr. Robert Short's past life hypno regression therapist who actually worked with mediums during his sessions. And some of the women have gone through that, and they talk about this feminine aspect and taking their power back. And there seems to be something going on, and I don't know if you felt it, but a lot of people in the spiritual community have felt it, that there's some kind of shift that's occurring. And I think that part of that shift also is starting to reclaiming the feminine aspect, taking that power back, and we're going to start seeing more of and we're already seeing it now, that trend of women on the rise, or that feminine aspect, the toxic masculinity starting to leave, because I've seen that a lot, like certain men raising their son or whatever. It's not okay to cry, that kind of thing. And I think that's tying into this shift as the kind of like yin and yang, as it comes into balance, we'll start to treat each other better, or society will start to come better. Do you feel that there's some kind of a shift occurring, or people are kind of waking up? And also, if the feminine aspect has something to do with it, I think it does. I think it's tied in to that as well.
I absolutely do. I have seen this pendulum swing, right? There's a pressure. I feel swelling. I feel it's swelling like a womb, so to speak. We are talking about when we talk about any of the UAPs, anything we can't deny the creatrix, right, aspect of where we all come from, or the many places we come from. And there is this rise, this swell of the divine feminine, of femininity to begin with. And when I say the divine feminine or femininity, I don't mean I am by all means not, I've got Vans on. I am not like that. I don't mean the long fingernails and all the things. I just mean this opposition, this more nurturing aspect.
Energy.
This energy, we are craving to be nurtured. We are craving new language. We are craving that as a society. I really believe. And yes, I have seen it. I think even with I mean, of course, with all the progress we had, then it's two steps back, right? But and I don't want to get political on here, but I think you know what I mean. But yes,
Yeah.
we start to gain this progress, and then it comes back, which then causes this adversarial push, and then there's this explosion. But there's there's something very wild that wants to be released, and that is very native to the feminine divine within all of us, male and female. There is there is something wild that is wanting to be released and that is craving to be released, and that natural aspect of all of us, of the three of you, of me, that when we feel something like that we need to just express, like that is the divine feminine. With astrology, understanding like the different energies of the planets translates to the different energies of like deity or of gods, of spirits. And when we are able to be sensitive to what happens on the other realm, right, on the other side, when we are sensitive enough to be able to, like, I know you've had UAP experiences, right, and outer body experiences. When we're sensitive enough to recognize this, we're able to allow so much more information to be downloaded and so we can understand more than just what's like in this like little room that I'm in right now, right?
In our reality that's been taught to us. Yes.
It's just to me, it like boggles my mind when I come across someone who's completely muted themselves to it. But I do love and respect their decision, only like because we're all brought here at different stages of our lives, and our lives as a whole. So like some of us have been, in the way I've been shown, have been reincarnated, and maybe we're in a rest state, right? Maybe we're in a rest period because we just had a really, can I curse on here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Like we had a really fucked up existence the lifetime or two before. And we are now here to like, you know, we've all met those people that are working the job, they go home to the like everything's like okay, and nothing is experimental. They're not interested in exploring certain things. That's totally fine. Did it used to frustrate me? Yes. But I've grown to be like, you know what? They most likely had a really like messed up, like in challenging life beforehand, or maybe they're prepping for what's to come in their next lifetime. And I need to, you know, approach that with a lot more like care and kindness. And then there are those that are in their lifetime of I'm prepping myself for, you know, whatever it is that's coming next, and you're kind of gaining those tools. And that's what I love astrology for, is it's an easy way to apply these principles into like this like lifetime, right? And we talk about our nodes, our north and south node, like past lifetimes tools, and like where we're headed in this journey for this lifetime. But yeah, being able to just be very sensitive and to be able to receive the vibrations coming from wherever, whatever it is that is choosing to share it with us at the time. I think when dealing with like clients too, like something as simple as like astrology, a basic, just knowing like your basic transits, like what's happening like today, which is why I do those like the lunar ones that I put up on TikTok every a couple of days. Just kind of knowing the overall vibration, and it's for the broad, right? Because I'm not able to do everybody's like individual chart every couple of days, but for the broad sweep of like, hey, here's kind of the vibration, knowing that going into seeing a client, or even just like coming across like someone on the street, you have that information, they may not, but knowing that you may be met with some sort of like resistance. Like we've been in Mercury retrograde, right, for the last few weeks. It's coming to an end, thankfully, next week or this coming week. But knowing something simple like that, and then knowing that communication may be a little when you're having a conversation with a client, or with a loved one, or with a friend, or with a coworker, or knowing that like like we had like the full moon in Aquarius, like it's affecting us this way. Knowing certain themes just around that, broad themes, will really help like navigate everyday uh, uh everyday relationships. You know what I mean?
Interactions. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And I also think that what you were saying, we talked about this briefly prior to being on camera, but that those are my favorites, the people who are so closed off, only to have an experience. Maybe they had an NDE or out of body experience or seen a spirit for the first time that makes them finally start questioning their whole belief system and completely changing. And that not always, but frequently, it can come from like the medical community, especially like doctors who are so embedded in science and materialism that they don't really incorporate like spiritualism or any of that stuff. And there are many doctors, and then I've gone through their cases where they were like, "Yeah, I was completely closed off to this stuff," and then I had my own near-death experience. It's real. I left my body. There's more to this universe and all that. And I honestly believe the inner is a reflection, the outer is a reflection of the inner, so that's what we're seeing also as this like build up happens. And like I tell the guys and everybody else, that trying to fight this change is like trying to punch the ocean to prevent the waves from hitting the shore.
Good
It's just,
analogy. Yeah.
it's just not gonna happen. And there is that ebb and flow, and we're tired of it, but I think it's happening.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Um, it's funny, real fast, even just like with astrology, when you get like a chart read for you, and I think we were talking about this a little bit before we were recording, and you know, people taking it like either like really, really literal or dismissing it altogether. I think what astrology essentially is like, hey, it's kind of like a weather forecast, right? Like I always call it astro weather. Like the weatherman tells us like what the temperature is going to be, what the chance is of rain or
That's the
wind or
way of putting
snow or
it.
some
Yeah.
sort of inclement weather, and it's up to us to know and to decide. We have that will, right? Like, am I going to bring an umbrella? I know it's going to rain, but am I going to grab it? I don't know, maybe not.
Right.
And then you get rained on. You're like, oh well, like it's not going to like the
Nothing's
rain
set in
isn't going to
stone.
like melt you. But maybe you were going to an interview and your hair was all done, and now it's like flat or what, I don't know, whatever it is. But it's these the transits are very similar, right? To to what we're talking about. The To speak on what you were talking about with like the doctors, I actually have a lot of physician clients,
Mm.
which it always takes me aback. Sometimes I'm like, I love this. And then also to speak about what you're talking about, it sometimes takes like that near death experience or having lost someone before one starts to question, like, oh, wait, is there something else? And I find this with, I'll use my sister as an example, who is still very, very much in the church. I lost my brother in law, her husband. Um, when was it? A year and a little over a year and a half ago. And she was left as a widow at mid 40s. That's very young. Um, very religious person. And after he left us, she started having these experiences, and she knows I do mediumship, and she's been talking to me more openly about it, where beforehand it was we don't cross that subject, right? That subject line. But now she's so much more open to it, and she sends me little videos that she's seeing. She's like, is this true? And I'm like, what is it true to you? Because here's the cool thing about all of this is, don't read on the internet about these experiences. Like, if you feel like something is a sign, then chances are it is a sign. If you like she's like, there's this bird that's blah blah blah. I'm like, you know what? How many times do you see birds in a day, and yet that one bird caught your eye? So like, just like I kind of like just explain it like that to people who are a little bit maybe close off at first, like, and they're curious if they are seeing signs. Like start with like that, right? Like there was a bird that flew into her garage and would not leave. And it was a bird that was not necessarily known to be in that particular area of the country that she's in.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, that is so obviously a sign to me, right? Or things like I've now been in her house and there is a definite presence there. But, one room happens to be very, very cold, no matter what the thermostat or how many times you have the person come out and finagle with your gadgets. So like things like that start to kind of like slowly open people's minds.
Mhm.
But the physician on duty when my brother-in-law passed straight up told us, and I was like, oh wow. I was surprised to hear him say this. Because my brother-in-law was on life support, and he was deemed brain dead, and so they, by law, they have to. It's probably him coming through right now. Um, they have to remove the tube, and I forget what it's called. And he said, you can talk to him. I know it shows that he's brain dead, but in my experience, he was like, he hears you. And I was like, I'm so happy that doctor said that. And it was really,
True too.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But a lot of times, you hear brain dead and they're like,
Yeah.
they can't hear you anyway. You're like,
I say the
If I
brain
can
is more like a
interject,
radio.
yeah, if I
it
can
really
interject real
is.
fast.
Yeah,
So
please do.
like, Lou Elizondo just came out, and it's had with his book Imminent talking about, UFO disclosure stuff that he's seen and stuff like that, things that he knows, that the government or other agencies won't put out. But he was talking about, on the Joe Rogan podcast, he was talking about when his mother died, and he said that when she was on the bed and she was passing, that she was supposedly, and I might misquote it, and I do apologize to anybody, but that when she passed, she was brain dead, but yet she looked at him, and he said he felt this communication between the two of them, right? Essentially, before, like her spirit looked at him and communicated, and then was gone. And he said that was like, it touched him so much that it was this mother's acknowledgement of her son, this love, even though technically she was brain dead, her body was dead, and everything else. It was just that look right before the soul went, right? And yeah, I mean, it's there. Unfortunately, I've lost pets over the past year. We all kind of have,
Mm.
and it's the same thing. It's the when they're gone, when you see it leave, when you see the soul leave, and you're just there, as he stated, is just a vessel, which a lot of people get freaked out when they say, "Oh, Bob Lazar said that the aliens say that our body is just a vessel," and you even have Lou Elizondo going, "Well, yeah, that's what a lot of the ancient religions talk about, is that our human body is just a vessel for our soul. What's the big scare, right? We're
Right.
not. This isn't us. This isn't John. He like my spirit loves the Doors, which is California, by the way. And but as far as that goes, me wearing the Doors shirt does not make me who I am. Me wearing glasses does not make me who I am. I'm a spirit. I'm a soul living this human experience in this incarnation. I might next incarnation, previous incarnation I may have, but there's definitely the soul goes. The soul leaves the body. And so many people report that when they see, like, grandmother in a casket, grandpa in a casket, loved one, in the hospital that's passed on, pet that's passed on, that, and even we had one dog that died afterwards, like 9 months prior. It's still rough. But, we believe, again, here I am in soapbox again, but we believe that we taught them, our job was to teach them for their next incarnation, whether they can come back as human or be another dog. And I know that there are some mediums that actually connect people with their former pets, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. But at the same time, they taught us. They taught us what unconditional love was. And if we showed that unconditional love, side note, to each other, what a much better world we'd live in. And I think that's our true nature. And we've been programmed over time to not do that. Another subject. Anyway, but the dog that we had that still survived went and checked out the body of his brother after he passed. And he could tell that the soul was no longer there. And he walked away from it like, okay, he's no longer there. And just went walking on. And there was some mourning and stuff like that. As animals mourn, animals have feelings just like we do. We are animals.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And the universe and stuff. And so they can tell. This may be completely far off, but have you ever had experiences with a client, someone that you're helping, and you can actually feel the presences around them when they like walk in the door, or if you've ever met them anywhere, and like maybe not always good, but maybe like weights that act like weights to kind of hold them down. Not trying to get dark here, but it's just like we all have our demons, right? We all have our demons that we have to deal with, our dark side of the soul. And I don't know if that becomes like a tulpa, or I don't know if that's another like entity that's kind of like latching on or anything like that. I'm not trying to suggest anything of the sort, but I just wonder if you've ever had instances where it's like, yeah, that darkness that you kind of have that's over you almost has like control of you in a way, and you really need to kind of not exercise the demon, but deal with it in some ways because it's holding you back.
1,000%. So you bring up a really good point, and I want to distinguish a couple of things before talking about exactly that, because like I spoke about earlier, we're given like this like set of like guides, right? And these guides are there like, and they, how do I say, they have our best interest at heart, right? So there are the guides that we have around us, our spirit guides, which, you know, that's what I'm mainly bringing messages forward from. And some of these guides could be like past loved ones, right? And so sometimes, like, you know, the grandmother comes forward, or like the uncle, or like the sister, or the whatever it is. But Jonathan, when you're talking about these darker weighing down energies, yes, I absolutely feel that when people like will walk into a session, even if it is over Zoom. And what happens is those like weighed down energies are not ones that are like our guides by any means, but they can be different types of energies or entities, more like earth-bound entities, and energies that have their own agenda, so to speak. And I mean, we're all made up of energy, right? Like, and some of us are very susceptible of 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 bringing on that as well. Like, I cleanse myself like nonstop, especially because around like Halloween, you know, I get asked to go into places and like do more of like that, the paranormal stuff. And so, yes, there are entities that can like latch on. I go into cemeteries and I do work there as well. And I always have to be very mindful of how I'm exiting, because, you know, certain energies can be like drawn to
Hitchhiker
me at that
effect.
time.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, there are entities, there are energies that will suck up on like someone and weigh them down. And a lot of times you'll see like someone will come to me like, I feel blocked, like everything is just like going wrong and this and that. And, you know, I might do their chart first just to make sure they're not in like a challenging transit, so to speak. And I, you know, and if they are, I can be like, hey, you know what, got like another couple of weeks, or you got like a month or so of said this going on. But typically I can feel if it's something that needs to be cleared. And I I have my own ways of cleansing that, and then I can give them um, ways that I think they might be comfortable with, because everyone has a different comfortability with where they want to go with cleansing themselves. Um, but yeah, that absolutely happens. A lot of times when you're dealing with these like kind of earth bound entities, what it is like they're like, I always say that we're like made up of like, light energies and dark energies and all the energies in between, all that gray energy in between, right? And so when we pass, a lot of that lighter energy tends to ascend, where that heavier weighted energy gets left behind. Like it's not just like and boom, that goes there. It's kind of this like, I've seen it like disperse to like energies, right? To like, let's say, it'll go to like a tree, to a living tree, certain things like that. Or if like heavier bound energies might collect somewhere that is more built up and like negative in nature. So like, what am I trying to say? I'm getting ahead of
So like
myself.
kind of like battlegrounds, I guess you would say, like war battlegrounds, like a lot of Civil War battlegrounds. People will go there and they'll be like, man, the energies are just like really
There's a
dark
scar
here.
there. There's a
There's a
scar
There
in
is
scar there. It's like in the
heavy
soil.
scar.
Right.
When someone has been taken with a traumatic, like a disruptive, like
Murder or
death
something.
like that, like murder, we usually feel like that lingering, like certain lingering. That doesn't mean that they haven't crossed over. That means that some of that is still unresolved and is still hanging, back. Sometimes what we see is like a film playback of a, a ghost or like a spirit. Sometimes we find that. I have lived in a place here in Los Angeles where there was just someone that was jumping off the building like every day at a certain time. The first time I saw it, I was oh my God, because I was outside of the building, and then and I ran, like it weirded me out, and then I researched it, and like, oh yeah, there's someone who took, unalived themselves in this year at this time. And paranormal people who go and explore these things during Halloween would do tours there, and the people would be looking for it. And I was like, oh wow. But yeah, that was just like a kind of like a loop, a film, like in the fabric of time, like just being played over and over.
Do you think
So
that that's residual energy that the house has absorbed, the memories that the house, again, we're going to the land, right? But the
mhm.
house, because like I'm kind of like of an animist kind of a thought pattern that everything is
Oh
alive,
yeah.
right? All the
Yes.
molecules, this desk is actually alive. It just seems like it's static, but all the little molecules are still moving around just at a very slower rate, right? And so the house, like the house I live in, has shown me that it is alive. It retains memories. So do
Hmm.
you think something like that, that it's such a traumatic experience of
Hmm.
someone taking their own life um, in any way, or a murder or anything else, um, the house absorbs, it learns that.
It
It
does.
learns that. And then when people are sensitive like yourself, or even they're sensitive, they don't even realize it, right? And they go in and they see this spectral activity that is really just the house reflecting this traumatic experience, because
Yeah.
in itself it's experienced that.
What explains topography?
Right. What do you think about that, Mandy?
Oh, I honestly cannot move into a place if it doesn't have like memories. And when my husband first started looking to live together, he was like, I how do we like, I don't understand. How do I get you out of this one building? And I was like, it just, I'll tell you when I feel it. It has to have soul. It has to have memories. It has to have like, it has to have this like breathing element to it. Um and I'm okay with it being, uh a scarred element. I'm okay with that as well, but it has to have something like that, which the building I'm in now definitely does. Um, but there had to be a compromise because, he's not comfortable with like a bunch of like, stuff
Yeah.
happening all the time. I mean, maybe he is now, actually. I'm not, I should give him more credit than that. He does live with a medium. He's always like, wait, what are you looking at? I'm like, oh, nothing. And he's like, oh, is it that woman again? I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
But
as long as he's not
we
like,
have,
so what do you think about my day today? Should I wear blue or red? I mean, as long as it doesn't get that bad, am I going to have better fortune if I wear the green shirt today or the yellow shirt?
right.
Because green is for money, yellow is for gold. And no disrespect to your husband, but I mean,
Non-obtrusive entities for sure. But actually, speaking of like unintrusive entities, they can become intrusive, right? When we are in these places and one starts to give too much energy to that entity, they can grow because, again, we're just exchanging energy and like putting it there. So then that starts to grow and have power. I once worked with a client who came to me and they were like, "Oh, uh, I have something, an entity in my house, and I just want to know if it's like good or bad." And I was like, "Well, that's really hard to just to kind of say, like, is something good or bad? Like, are we good or bad? Like, we're everything, right?"
True.
So I'm like, let's see, like the activity, what type of activity, and it was pretty benign, but which was great. And I told her, I was like, just stop giving it any attention. That is just, one of those like kind of like thumbprints of the house, right? Like just like stop giving it attention. Well, she kept feeding into it. And this isn't like a devotional thing to like a deity, but she was feeding it like it was, and it got so much stronger that at one point it was able to push her grocery bag over onto her burner of her stove, and it caught fire.
oh
That
wow,
to me is dangerous, and that's why I was like, hey, now it's really hard to kind of like break back down, but because you've given it so much energy. So when you like have these things like happen, which we used to have some stuff happen in our apartment that we're in now, I was like, just ignore it, just ignore it. I'll go through and like, call a rishagal and like kind of clear out a room, but then let's be silent to it. Like, don't communicate with it, don't give it attention, because that little hand grab that you feel all of a sudden starts to like move the sheets, and then that starts it can grow and grow. So there's if it's an earthbound type entity and it's being benign, just leave it be, and it typically will start to dissipate. If not, there, of course, there are other things you can do. But yeah, I'm always like, don't feed into it. It wants your energy. That's how it grows. That's how it gets stronger. You know, Going back to everyone having abilities, here's the thing is like, especially those folks which this who have had traumatic childhoods or very abusive childhoods, or like even like uber religious childhoods that have maybe triggered us in some way. We learn to read people's expressions in different ways, which help us start to understand like what's going on in here, right? So it better helps us become like the mediums that we end up becoming. I 1,000% know we all have these abilities. Again, whether we explore that and strengthen that muscle is up to us.
So first of all, about 20 minutes ago, I heard something behind me. It like creaked like the whole area, and I was like, "What the heck? That's not normal." And that was like literally a few minutes before you were talking about your brother-in-law. So just wanted to make that note. The other thing too is we did have our kitty pass away. Oh God, month and a half now. It was my girlfriend's. It was her familiar. Like she was, was inseparable, and she had an aneurysm and just passed away randomly. So that was very traumatic for us. But the interesting thing is, since our mourning process, we have so she would always yell at us. She was very vocal about her food and stuff, so she'd always try to trip us in the kitchen. Well, the night she passed away, I was getting stuff, and I like hit my shin on the thing was down. I hit my shin, and I bruised it hard. Like, I was like, what the heck? And then my girlfriend went down to grab something, and she almost tripped and like ate it. And so we were like, okay, she's still around. And then we've also had one time, I was showering, my girlfriend was hanging out in the room, and then our cat was on the bed, and then we heard like scratching at the door, like underneath. And then I was like, does my kitty need to get in? And she's like, no, she's in here on the bed. And we've had echoes of her still in the house, so that's been really sweet. But I wanted to mention that. The other thing too, you were talking about kind of scars on areas or events or places, and I think that's something that I've definitely had to come to grips with within my own childhood of being in Surprise Valley where I was raised, because the area that all of the energy it's super palpable, like it's very thin. You can just feel it when you go into the valley. But that was where a lot of bloodshed happened between the settlers and the tribes. There's actually wagon wheel trails through the alkali bed right there that you could still visibly still see. So when I was being raised in it, like I was almost strangled. I was almost strangled to death when I was a kid, like invisible hands on my throat. Did a lot of crazy stuff. But as I deconstructed my religion, I realized that those events were not demons. They were just echoes and a scar that was reacting to the fact that we were coming on to the people, even though we were invited, like to build a church. It was still echoing that it was still echoing history in that way. And so, it's so interesting to it's so interesting how that can be a part of our experience as humans, and the phenomenon in all of its array of complexities seems to be able to reach out in different ways. And I wanted to say, so when I'm trying to tie this back into the divine. So when I started deconstructing my religion, my family is Irish and Scottish mainly. That's where our family comes from. I felt a strong connection to Danu, which is the Irish goddess of creation and fertility and everything like that. And that I felt like was a pillar for me to start healing from some of my religious trauma. But like being tied to the divine was like extremely important, and something that I realized that has been a thing through my life. And now the beings that I'm in contact with, one of the ones that have recently come was like a mother figure that was a non-human intelligence. So it's just interesting how it echoes those things. But I wanted to ask you, do you feel like the divine feminine has become more of a equalizer in not just women but men as well, to kind of get away from the how things have been for so long, that's been quote male dominated, or like the patriarchy? Do you feel like that this is like not just it's all going to help with this catalyst of this great change that's happening that we can all feel?
Oh, yeah, no, thank you for sharing your story about your kitty. Um, I think all of us can attest to when we lose a pet is it's very different than losing, a human that's close to us. It's a different, it feels a little different. It's intense. It is intense. Um, when I lost my dog, he was a pug, um, uh, in 2018, I don't think I've wailed like a banshee ever in my life like I did then, right? Like it's just, but pets are so special, and they like I forget which one you mentioned this, like they come along and they teach us so much about ourselves, and like, and in this short amount of time that they're on this planet, we're able to just kind of like learn how, like, well, hopefully, right, at least like I didn't completely learn, but I now looking back, I saw, hindsight is 2020, like, God, time is so precious and time is so short, and go out, go for your walk, enjoy life, or go for your whirl around the block, whatever, like whatever it is that makes you happy, just do it. And they really are a testament to unconditional love. And so when their spirit passes, it leaves such a void, such a hole, right? And yeah, there is those like little echoes, those little stamps that are left. I will have my pet come. He's on my spirit team currently. I don't know if he will remain there, but he is at this moment. And I leave like a little peanut butter for him out on my altar, have one for him. Sometimes I hear bells, because I used to have little witch bells that I would leave on my doorknob, and I trained him to knock them when he needed to go to the restroom if it wasn't in our normal like walking time. And so every once in a while, I'll hear those witch bells, and I don't have them on my door at all now because I don't have an animal.
They can do the
And it just boop, and I'll hear it, and like he's coming in to say, "Hey, just want to like pop my little head in," or I'll hear his bark, which was very distinctive. He was a pug, and they have a very distinctive nasally kind of sound. Yeah. So yes. God, the loss of a pet is gut wrenching. Not that the loss of a human isn't. It's just it's different. It's a different. And
Yeah.
to speak about my brother-in-law, I felt like he was going to come around when I started speaking about him, because I felt him here as well. And so it doesn't surprise me that you heard something over there. He is very active. His spirit is strong for having passed just a year and a half ago. When he passed, this was really interesting as well, is when they removed everything from him and they pronounced him gone, it was about 5 minutes after, and his body started to lift up, and his eyes opened and looked right at my sister, and his hands outreached. Everyone in the room, because we had already just like, okay, like it was like, okay, like the pain is over, like da da da, and and I was like, oh my God, now we're gonna have a discussion. And I was waiting for people to like come, like, what's going on? But there was this like this last acknowledgement of, hey, I'm still here. I am not leaving. This is literally just a body. And the nurse was even there, and my sister was like, "Is he alive?" She's like, "No," but apparently, like sometimes you can have like movements, but she had never seen someone like straight up sit up, and
I've heard of that like happening, but that's not that's not
it
that.
was like a 90-degree boop. But when his spirit was gone, it was gone, and it was, you could feel it. I think Jonathan, you had said that like when you feel that spirit like leave, that 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 shell, right? This like this body that we're in, it doesn't even look like the person. And that's what I think makes it I guess, easier to, and or less challenging to even like accept sometimes a death, is when you're like, wait, that's not them.
And some
But then
people will
you,
say, well, that's because you're the skeptics will say, well, that's because you're not seeing the body animated. No, No, it's no, it's not that at all. It's not like, someone's in a deep sleep and you look over and they're laying in the bed next to you, your partner's laying in bed next to you and you're like, oh my God, is she breathing? No, it's nothing like that.
No.
It's that no, you can tell when the life is
Yeah.
not there anymore. It's a completely different feel. And people can be skeptical all they want, but they even know what I'm talking about, because if they've experienced
It's
it,
true.
they know. That's right.
Exactly. And that spirit, that intense energy, it
Essence.
is not disappearing, right? Like that, none of this just disappears. It just ascends, and we start to experience it when we want to call upon it, when we want have signs. Any of us can say, okay, I want a sign from my grandmother. Like show me a sign, and you will walk out and you will see something. You might smell something, and when your eyes are open to it, it'll start to kind of, the spirit realm will start to enliven around you.
They're multidimensional too, right? That's my understanding. Me and John have had spirit rod sessions, and they would, and he was speaking with an entity, but the entity, and I've done this with another friend who he believes it was his spirit guide, but they were answering our rods simultaneously. We asked them if they could do that, and distance didn't seem to matter. And that's what a medium had mentioned too, that he was having a session with someone there, but it was like an event that they were having. They had split the family apart, and that other medium was also connecting with one of the same souls simultaneously somehow. That distance is just not really, you could be in two places at the same.
Mhm.
It's like a weird. You've encountered anything like that, or?
I mean, I do mediumship readings from via Zoom all the time, and so
Yeah,
people are over phone or in
yeah,
person
yeah,
or
that's a
in a
good
group.
point.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I still go about it the same way, where I connect with my guides and I connect with their guides, and it's
Right.
a very personal. It's a very intimate session. Um, Time means nothing. Space means nothing to spirit.
That's
To
my
any of the
understanding as
spirits.
well.
I think that's so. I've never used the rods, and I've always been so intrigued by them. So I think that's a really cool experience to
Oh,
have
you
had
wanted to
them.
try it.
I
I
also
saw
I
use a
someone
think
do
that
it. I
spirit
was like, "Ooh, I
box.
want to try it."
I also use a spirit box, Mandy, and I've
mm,
my fiance and I have had quite the messages through the spirit box. Not to be like, hey, how much are you going to charge me if you listen to some of these things and see what you can pull, as far as like, I'm curious though, as far as like emotions. So maybe one of these days I could share a few clips for you, audio clips of some of the things that they've said, and you just get back to me if
please,
that's okay, and you just get back to me and see if you sense anything, because oh, they
please.
talk. Oh, they talk. We had had a reminder. Was talking to a mutual friend of all of ours, and there was one time we were having a spirit box and rod session, and we're talking and trying to address the entities. They say that they're NHI, and I believe that they are non-human intelligence, but you don't know. You just got to go with what your gut feeling tells you. Okay,
Yeah.
and so I'm trying to communicate. She sees more visually than I do. I'm more of like, not a channel. I'm nobody special. I'm just me. I'm just an ordinary guy trying to figure this out
You're
like everybody else.
special.
Well, what I'm saying though is that I'm
You're
just an
all very
ordinary
special.
guy trying to figure this out. I'm not going to claim that I'm a channeler or anything like that. This is my personal choice. Okay. So I'm just communicating, right? And the voice comes over and says, "Look, they speak." As if that entity is showing other entities they're able to hear me. They're speaking to me. And I was thinking about that because I saw a clip of there was this woman, and not to keep focusing on animals, there was this woman that can essentially speak to animals. And there's this guy in Australia, I believe it was, might have been New Zealand. No offense to any Kiwis or Aussies out there, because I know us Americans sometimes we can't figure out the two. But anyway, and this guy had a black snow leopard, or a black leopard, spotted leopard, and he named it Diablo. and Diablo was on his property, and Diablo's in a cage, and Diablo, every time he walks by, Diablo snarls, and Diablo doesn't trust, and he's like, okay, you know, this cat's just really, this wild cat's just really wild, right? And so this woman, I can't remember her name, it's not important, comes and she's like speaking with the animal, not verbally, just reading each other's eyes, having that communication, right? And she says, well, you know, first off, the cat doesn't like the name Diablo because of the implications that you've put on that name on him. And that cat is worried about the two cubs that were with him when you adopted him. And you don't let him roam, and he doesn't feel like you respect him and stuff like that. And the guy started crying because he was a skeptic before. He started crying because he noticed that once he gave that cat acceptance, the cat was calm. The cat went out, you know, and went across the land, the refuge, and everything else. Didn't snarl when he went by, and all this, that, and the other. And here was the point that I was trying to make with that, is that we think for some, my first thought was, has this guy ever had a pet? But there are some people that have never had a pet. I don't know how that happens. It's like some people don't hear their own inner dialogue in their own voice, or they don't hear anything at all in their head. I don't understand, but hey, okay. And it's just like, did this guy ever have a dog or a cat or a bird? You know, something past a goldfish, but even a goldfish would be like, oh, hey, you know, feed me. So there's some kind of like recognition there. So obviously, maybe he didn't. Okay. But it has its own feelings and emotions. Going back to that yet again, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse. And it was like, wow, this wild cat can hear me. And so it was like these entities were, this one entity was telling, whether it be a spirit or whatever, was telling these other ones, look, they can hear me. I'm having communication with them. And we're just picturing, because Melissa said that she sensed that there was that there was a crowd in the kitchen, that there was more than one observer, right? That was observing us. She felt multiple presences, and she was just like, and then that came across. I was like, well, holy cow. Yes, we're communicating with you. Yes, we hear you. Speak more. And that's kind of, it goes right along with mediumship, right? It really does.
1,000%. Yeah.
But it just through a device, which we have actual recordings of. And this device, for anybody that's watching,
Oh,
it goes, a spirit box, a ghost box, just goes rapidly through radio stations, right? And channels on AM or FM at certain speeds that you set it on, you slow or fast, and picks up messages, right? And usually EVPs and stuff like that. But it'll pick up messages that are going through these channels in order to have communication with lost loved ones, friends, you name it, right? And so there is something there. But I'm kind of like curious if I just share like a couple voice clips
please
with you,
do. Yeah,
just see what
yeah.
you think about that,
I'm happy to listen and tell you what I'm
because it's
getting. I would
crazy
love
stuff.
that.
It's wild stuff. And you know, I never considered myself anybody that would speak to spirits or aliens or anything else. You know, I didn't really, because again, I think we're programmed that way for the most part. That hey, that stuff's just bogus. You know, that stuff's not real. These are all shysters that are grifters that are going for your money. No, it's real. Look through
It's real.
history.
It's real.
It's it's not mythology. And mythology, most
No.
mythology is based off of fact at some point in time. So it's not just fantasy, is what I mean to say. It's not just you know the whole. And that's why I say I'm not special. It's just because I'm not claiming to be some deity or anything like that, or some cult leader or anything. You know, we're all trying to figure this out. Mandy, you came on our podcast today with your puzzle pieces, and I know that there's so many more puzzle pieces that we have not talked about. And I do hope that we can have you on again so we can delve into this stuff further, um, because it's fascinating. I mean, to have a full conversation about mediumship, the phenomena, family, loved ones, you name it, would take a lifetime to not only just talk about, but obviously to practice. And I know that, and I just know, not just hope, but I know that having you on today is going to inspire at least one person. And all it takes is one, in my belief. One person is all to inspire them. That's right, heart. To inspire them to follow a path that at least you've followed, whether it be through reconnecting with the divine feminine, whether it be helping other family members or friends deal with the loss of a loved one, having contact, or to come out of the shadows and not be afraid to state on who they are and what, and I say power not in a negative way, but what power they have inside of them, as that I have my own power and I will reclaim it and I will use it for the betterment of my fellow man and woman. That's what I'm talking about. And I just want to briefly mention that you went to the Los Angeles School for the Spiritual Arts, which is new to me because, I'm not in LA. But how was that experience for you, really, really quick? How was that school?
It was great. So I've had this ability my whole life, and it wasn't until way later that I chose to take a more concentrated path, or take this more concentrated path, and I knew that I needed guidance on not how to do it because it just happens for me, but I needed to learn like boundaries, and I needed to learn how to uh, let one in at a time when I'm giving a reading, because uh, we're all surrounded by so many different guides at any given point, right? And so many different spirits at any given point. So I needed to kind of like be able to figure out that part of the puzzle. And so I was able to learn how to exercise that part of the muscle. So it was a great experience. I met some really amazing people through that program, and yeah, I highly recommend it for anyone who is, especially in this same boat, where it's like you have the abilities, but how do you keep them from becoming overwhelming when you're in public or when you're giving a reading, or whatever it is. So that was essentially what I went to that program to learn, was how to
Hone your
organize that.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, yeah.
in a nice, clean way.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that hearing like having a lot of experiences at one time, because again, um, on the other side, whatever veil, whatever have you, dimension, doesn't matter what we call it, it's there, multiple layers, and they sense that you can hear them. Then it's just woof, you got like a whole stadium that's like coming towards
Yeah,
you. Oh my goodness, she can hear me.
yeah.
He can hear me.
It
Yeah.
it the second, yeah, it's absolutely like that. When you walk into any room, it the same thing happens. Mediumship, as you can expect, my journey was and has been and continues to be immensely transformative. And I'm shown different things all the time. I think that's what's so cool, is no reading is ever the same. So it's I never know what to expect myself when I'm getting a client. Uh, yeah, it's I and the most rewarding thing, though, of being a professional medium is being able to provide, that sense, help provide that sense of like closure to clients, to help provide that sense of comfort, of peace, right, and togetherness still. That it's not that they're just gone. So, um,
It's not to drain their bank accounts, or to make
no.
where you being the limelight and be on
Mm-mm.
TV and just be a grifter or anything like that. It's not. Are you sure it's not to just money and fame is the only reason why you're doing it?
I did it up until the pandemic. I never charged. I never charged. I did it. I did it. I did it. And then I, it was around like, that was a turning point for most people, right? Like the pandemic, like I found myself reassessing my own life and like priorities during this period. And the world was so uncertain, and it was such a big change for everyone. I just realized that the mundane aspects of my previous work was no longer fulfilling, and it wasn't aligned with like my true purpose. And this
Been
was,
there.
yeah, right. So it was just, I just felt this like strong urge to really dive into mediumship fully. And it was, it was really challenging too, to be like, well, wait, if I'm going to do this full time, that means I actually do have to start charging. And that takes a little bit of that's kind of a
Yeah,
mind fuck
humility.
too. Like,
Yeah.
but
Look,
it's all worked out, and I couldn't be happier. And I've met so many incredible people. I would say most of my clients are now my friends because I hyper connect with people.
so there's this
But
time I
yeah,
went to so in retrospect of that, and I'm sorry to keep dragging this on, but in retrospect of that, I remember one time I still drink. I still drank. I don't drink anymore. I haven't drank for
no neither.
decades. But coffee, on the other hand, yes. And but anyway, so I went to this bar with a college buddy of mine after we got out of classes, and we're sitting there drinking, and I look over at the corner of the bar, sports bar average, and I see this woman, and she's probably in her 60s. She's dressed kind of gypsy-ish. I'm like, okay, this is odd. And she goes into her bag and she pulls out this silk wrapped package. She opens it up, and lo and behold, I knew what it was right away. It was her nice silk cloth that she put on the table, and she starts bringing out her tarot cards and she starts flipping them, and then she's looking around and she's looking at who can come along and wants a tarot card reading. And immediately my mind went, because I've done tarot card readings, but you know what I don't do? I don't do tarot card readings for people that are drunk. I don't bring people in that are drunk so I can take advantage of them for their money, right?
Yeah.
So I saw this one drunk fool, let's admit it, go up and sit down and start getting the tarot reading. So I went up and I had fill up that pitcher of beer for me and my buddy, and I'm looking over, and I could tell. I mean, I wasn't trying to be too obvious, like, but I could tell. I was kind of glancing, but she could tell that I was like watching her. And it's like she had something, right? She had something because she could sense that I was looking at her and that I knew, because I've at that point in time been reading tarot for like 25 years. So I knew that she knew, right? So I went and got the picture and put it back down, had some more drinks. Guy walks away. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just, it's not really my business, but I just feel like I have to say something because this is taking advantage of people. You are taking advantage of people when you're trying to do a reading for them and have an impact on their life when they're drunk.
Mm.
I mean, reading in a bar, I wouldn't do it. I don't think you would do it, Mandy. I just, that's taking advantage of people when they're drunk, right? And so, and that can bring on a whole bunch of emotional things because people that when they drink, it's a depressant and they get sad and they go through all kinds of emotions and they can be vulnerable. So I just went up and I said, shame on you. I really did. Just shame on you. She kind of scowled at me and I was like, reading tarot in a bar, taking advantage of people while they're drunk. I said, I've been reading for a long time and I've never thought I'd ever see this happen, but I know I wouldn't do it. And I walked away. And she eventually just picked up her stuff and left because I was kind of like on to her. In
Yeah.
my opinion, that's taking advantage of people. Okay. That's not really looking to help people. That is, that just money, just, yeah, I'm just going to use my talent in the wrong way kind of a thing.
Yeah.
What you do is completely different. And
I'll,
so
I'll
I
tell
just
you
want
what,
to
when
go ahead.
those the instances that I've seen where practitioners or mediums or psychics or whatever, when you start to abuse your ability,
Yes.
it will start to be taken away from you as well. I find that I find that's in like the nature of things. Like all of a sudden it'll start to wane because
Yeah.
there I feel like there is a natural law of order with that as well. And so yeah, I think when people abuse their abilities, abuse like any sort of like power or whatever they're given, it it will be taken, and sometimes not in a way that you think. It's
Right. It's got to be, it
yeah.
could potentially be more than you just waking up one day, not you specifically, but anybody that does that, waking up one day and being like, how come I can't read anymore? It could be that if you're lucky.
If you're
If,
lucky,
yeah,
yeah,
if not, it could be a lot more. So,
right.
yeah, but I just want the people that may be very pessimistic about mediumship and the people that provide those services. There is a stark difference between what you're trying to do, Mandy, and what you do for your clientele, and from what somebody that's actually out there that's trying to take advantage of people. I would highly suggest that if anybody is really interested in Mandy Wilde, and you should be, that you go to the wildmedium.com and check her out also on TikTok. And we're going to go ahead and make sure that we put all the links in this video and in the description.
If anyone's curious at all, like wildmedium.com, it's with an E,
You put it on the
WILDE,
screen.
medium. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Yeah, there I have lots of goodies on my IG and my TikTok and my Patreon now too. So um, I look forward to connecting with whoever wants to connect.
Yeah,
And
Daniel.
keep doing what you all are doing as well. It's very important. I think the information you're putting out there and the videos you're uploading and giving to the public is very important. The people need to know we are not alone. And so like whether you're talking, you know, UAPs or spirits or whatever, however people want to look at it, it's important work. So thank you for doing your magic as well.
Hey guys, I want to go ahead and thank everybody for joining us for this episode of Cosmic Convergence, spending time with all of us, including with Mandy Wilde, medium and awesome lady. And I just want to say that you should like, share, and subscribe our channel, and also go follow Mandy and contact her, and and open up some channels of communication. Okay, and I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for again joining us, and hope that you have a pleasant day, evening, and week. See you next week. Love you all.
Bye.
Bad monkey.
We're pioneering the world's most expansive, phenomenon-based database and research platform. Imagine a single gateway that harnesses the collective intelligence of our world. A portal that compiles every encounter, every academic study, and the full spectrum of data concerning remarkable phenomena. Meticulously curated and interconnected through advanced artificial intelligence, our platform transforms scattered information across the web and in physical print into a cohesive matrix of knowledge. Paradocs aims to bring all this content into one searchable, dynamic database. We're not only hosting the world's largest collection of phenomenon-related content, but also helping empower our users to find critical connections between diverse topics, from UFOs and alien abductions to near-death experiences and reincarnation reports.